Hey, folks, welcome back to The Human Practitioner. With me today is Mhanu Boulengier, who is originally from Amsterdam. He's a Marine Corps veteran. Manu, I don't have anything to say that's going to be anything more interesting than what you have to say. So, yeah, man, take it away. I'm grateful for you joining me today.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come onto your show and just spread my story a little bit and who I am and where I came from. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Mhanu Boulengier. As Greg said, I was born and raised in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Spent most of my life there until teenager. When I was 13, moved to Alaska. And Amsterdam is a big metropolitan city full of different cultures, a lot of tourism. And so I had all the luxury and amenities of, AC and light switches. And then when I moved to Alaska, I moved into a box in the woods, right? So we had no electricity, no running water. I learned what an outhouse was, and my first winter of 15 feet of snow. So very fast, I had to learn how to adapt to my environment and leave the city life behind, and learn how to live in the woods. Um, I did that for several years until actually the day that I was officially an adult, and the day I was 18, I had a ticket in my hand to go back to Amsterdam because, yeah, as a teenager coming from the city, I really wanted the amenities of the city. I really didn't want to struggle out in the woods, and so 18, I was back in this liberal city with no oversight, no parents. I'm technically an adult now, and so I was young and loved to party and just be out there and socialize. And like many others out there, I had that story where I got into the wrong things. I got into partying too much, and I got addicted. I got addicted to crack cocaine, and yeah, literally that drug took me into the gutter within probably 3 months. I had $500 left in my name. Pretty much sold everything I had, broke all the relationships that I had, and had to make that dreadful phone call home to my mom and say, I need help. And that was the first time where I really reached out and said I needed help. My mom was, so terrified, or instantly told me to come home. Came home, didn't want to be in Alaska where I tried to escape from. So my way out was the Marine Corps. My little brother just joined the Marines, did boot camp, joined recruiting duty right after boot camp. So for all you out there that don't know, if you get someone to sign up while you're on recruiting duty, you earn an extra rank. So who easier to get but your brother? And so I got to sign up underneath him. He went to private, the private first class. And I joined the Marine Corps. I did some calculating in my head because I don't like to take risks very often, and I thought we haven't been to war in 10 years. This was in the year 2001, and so I thought I'm pretty safe. Gulf, Desert Storm was 10 years prior, so I'm pretty good to go. I'll just do my 4 years and I'll get out. I get to see the world. I get to throw some grenades and shoot some guns, and be the best of the best, the few, the proud. I didn't want to join any other service. I wanted to be the best. So that's where I went. And I joined the Marines, went to boot camp, spent 5 months instead of 3 months down there because I ended up breaking my hand and ended up in a medical recovery platoon. Not the place to be. So it extended my training period. And then when I graduated and went home for my 10 days of boot leave, 9/11 happened 3 days after being home. So I got a phone call from my command already saying you might get called home early for training, so that way you can deploy because we might go to war. And I thought, man, I just graduated. I can't get out of this anymore. This is not what I wanted, but I'm stuck now. Fortunately, I didn't go to war right away. I got to serve my 10 days out, my boot leave, went to MCT, Marine Combat Training, did my school, and then got placed in 29 Palms, California, with a combat logistics battalion. And so we're the first ones to go in and set everything up when we do go to war, because we got to figure out how everything works. I was a squared away Marine. I was a corporal at the time. I had all my licenses. I was in motor transport, and I thought it was good to be that squared away Marine, but then you're also the first one to get picked to go to places that you don't want to go to because you're squared away. So I got to leave and depart, leave my whole unit and everybody else behind because I had to chauffeur a bunch of brass around in a place that was unknown to me in Kuwait. And so that's where, yeah, my first scare kind of really came to life. Like, hey, you're in an unfamiliar place, and there's a lot of dangerous things going on. Like, are you ready for this? Um, about a month or two later, my unit finally showed up, and I got to reunite, and we sat just there in Kuwait, waiting for the first phone call to be able to go across the border into Iraq. We finally got that phone call, and um, seeing and did a lot of things that I wish I didn't, I wasn't proud of, but those were my orders. And 6 months later, finally got the orders to come back home. And so I left that place, and in the meantime, I got hurt. I had some back issues that started in Iraq, and I was just told take some Motrin and drink some water. You'll recoup. I did that for about a year or so, or 6 months, and finally the MRIs came back. They're like, "Wow, you really need some back surgery." So I went in, got back surgery, got put on some light duty. The back surgery went sideways. It didn't go good, so they needed to do a correction. Got a second back surgery, and then just recouped until I got out of the Marines. By that time, I really was unmotivated, not ready to go anywhere anymore. I had a baby on the way, and so I said, "I've done my 4 years. I'm out of here." And yeah, that's when really a lot of things just started changing in my life, because I'm back in the civilian sector, and I'm still have the mentality of being this rough and tough son of a gun, and nothing can mess with me. And so that really didn't align in society. I became an outcast, so to speak, if you want to call it. Started drinking heavily like I was used to in the Marine Corps. Really, when I graduated school in Missouri, I was told by one of my instructors that, oh, you're going to 29 Palms. You're only going to be one of three things. It's going to be a gym rat, you're going to be a Bible thumper, or you're going to be an alcoholic. Well, I did all three, and not in that order. And so, yeah, trying to do that again once I got out of the Marines was really challenging. I didn't connect with a lot of people. They didn't. I lost my brotherhood. I lost my people, so to speak, and I just felt very alone. And so, a good way to cope with that was with alcohol. And yeah, I just started getting really heavily into alcohol, and it started. Yeah, really interfering with my personal life and my marriage, my family. And I was married, and I had three boys out of that marriage before I ended up giving up on that marriage. It just my self-destructive attitude and my addiction to alcohol just broke up my family. And now here I am all alone, with no kids. My kids are down the street, but not in my possession anymore. And yeah, I'm really all by myself. So what do? Like, I try to help myself, and that really didn't work very well. Like, that self medicating didn't work, and so it's been 13 years now that I quit drinking, and that was probably one of the greatest moves that I made. Um, I can say that when I was drinking, and I can see a lot of people around me. That have the same issue, you become very stagnant. You don't really become very motivated anymore. Kind of slip into some depression. You push everything off and start procrastinating a lot. And I remember the day that I quit drinking. Yeah, my life kind of just very fast went like this. The things that I pushed off for so long, now I had time to give attention to again. I finished school. I went back to school, and I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree with my GI Bill. And I always wanted to do that, but never did because I was just always pushing it off because of my drinking. And yeah, after that, I cleaned up, I sobered up, and finished 2 degrees and got myself a career again, and found a second chance to a family, and that was great, man. It's I found the purpose again in life, and I was being productive, but I really never dealt with the issues that were destructing me before. And so I just knew alcohol wasn't my go-to anymore, but there was so many other things that I could choose from. And so, let's go down that road, and that road is long, and so I tried cocaine, and I tried some crack again, and went on all these other different drugs because I just wanted to feel different, and I didn't know why. I was in denial that I had post traumatic stress and all the things that I've seen and went through, not only in my childhood, but also in my time with military experience. I was just running away from it. And the way that I was doing it is with drugs and alcohol. Excuse me. So, yeah, that was a very destructive path. And that one was worse than the alcohol because it's quicker, it's faster. Alcohol is slow. It's accepted everywhere in our society. So yeah, I chose the drugs, and the drugs really were at a fast pace. You know, the chemical imbalances that happened in my body just really took over, and you know, I didn't want to do crack cocaine, and I didn't want to snort things, but you know, I had a legal prescription to OxyContin because I had back surgeries, and my doctor had no problem prescribing me that kind of stuff. I used to get a bottle bigger than my coffee cup, and you know, every month, and you know, I would just take those, and I would just completely numb out. And I think it was all right because it was a legal prescription. I was getting it from the government, you know, and yeah, I wasn't doing something that was, you know, really frowned upon. And so started off with just a little bit, and then, you know, a little bit wasn't working anymore. So you take a little bit more, you know, to get the same effects, and then you start building up a tolerance. And what I didn't know at the time that I learned from a very powerful show that was on one of these platforms, it was called Dope Sick, and it talks about the Kessler family and the drug OxyContin and how it came to market and what it does. And one of the things that caught my attention from that show is that it actually changes the frontal lobe of the brain. And so there goes all your cognitive thinking. There goes, you know, who you are. And if I look back at my addiction to these pain pills, that's exactly what happened. Because shortly after being really deeply and heavily addicted to these pills, I caught myself at the edge of my bed. As a veteran, I had, you know, many means to protect myself, and then I'm catching myself at the edge of my bed with these means to protect myself, and now I want to harm myself or thinking about harming myself. And yeah, that's not me, you know, and I have children, and I thought the thing that really stopped me from ever going all the way through with it is that, you know, if I'm not here, what would their life be like? And there would be so much pain and resentment, and you know, like by taking one problem away, I would create so many more, you know, and I can't do that to me or them, and so I never really went all the way through with it. But we know today we got, technically, they say 44 veterans, you know, take their own life every day. We know that number is way more than what it really is. And, you know, fortunately for me, I was able to find the strength to not go through with that, and I found different alternative methods to go out there and help, you know, help myself. But that was only because I was able to just reach out and ask for help. And so, yeah, there was a show that I watched about a guy on YouTube. He was a badass British Royal Marine, right? He did like 20 years. He did 5 deployments. I mean, you know, this guy was made out of steel, right? He got injured 3 times and still went back. And he finally got injured to the point where he couldn't go back. And that was his whole livelihood. And he tried everything. He tried counseling, he'd done this and that, and nothing worked. And he tried to take his own life several times, but that didn't even work. And then he got into a thing called well, as we call it, horse therapy or equestrian therapy. And I had never heard of that. And I thought, well, that guy's a badass. I equate myself to him. I'm a badass, right? Nothing worked for him, nothing worked for me. But what is this equestrian therapy? Like horses, and I'm allergic as all can be to horses. Like I puff up and I can't breathe. And but you know, this guy was like, I tried everything else. Why not try it? And he found this connection with these horses, and these horses had like an extra sixth sense, and they were able to tap into him and just, yeah, things changed for him. He sold everything he had, bought a ranch, got horses, and now teaches it to other veterans, you know. I thought, I wonder if we have anything like that in the United States. And so I got on Google and, I did a horse therapy for a veteran, and, a few sites came up, and there was a non-for-profit organization in Kansas that came up, and I filled out just the application and kind of just forgot about it. Didn't hear back for about a month or two. And then all of a sudden I got this phone call, and I really had no idea who it was, what they wanted. Um, and then they mentioned something about horses. And they said, one day we do this horse therapy. Are you willing to come out to Kansas? And if you can't afford to come out, then we have an organization, another 501c3 that can link you up with a private pilot that's willing to donate his time to fly you out there. And I said, well, where do I sign up? And so a private pilot picked me up in Chino, California, flew me out to Kansas. I went through this program for a week. Yes, one day I blew up and I couldn't breathe, but it was worth it because I got that connection with that horse. I understood what the horse was trying to teach us, and that's a horse can see right through the mask that we wear every day. So when Craig, you tell me, "Hey, Manu, how are you doing today?" And I say, "I'm great, Craig," but deep down inside, I'm hurting, right? A horse can see right through that. Sometimes we can't, and a horse can feel that. So they told me, like, if you really feel that way, try to go up to a horse and say, "I'm great," and try to pet the horse. The horse will walk away from you, right? Until you're really willing and able to tell yourself, "No, I'm not okay." And then the horse will come up to you, and then before you know it, you're connecting with this horse and he's letting you touch him. And you can feel this transfer of energy. And so that was a really profound moment. And I thought, wow, like that didn't take any kind of drugs. I didn't have to take any kind of medication or sit in an office. This was like a natural thing, just connecting with this horse. And then another thing they taught us was how to meditate. And I thought meditation was for hippies. I thought I tried it one time before and I couldn't. I was like, what is this? Right? Like that's not for me. And then in this class, this lady taught us the science behind it. I didn't know I was a visual learner. I had to understand why do we do these things. And once she explained to me how the amygdala works and what that is and what part of the brain that controls and the chemistry that happens in our body because of it and how we can change that. And she gave it just a little small example of that. It all resonated with me. And and I started taking on those practices and things started really just, yeah, simmering down for me. I was always in this elevated state. I was always alert. I was always on my toes is from my time in the service and from my childhood. And now I started feeling myself just getting a little bit more settled in and more settled in. And 3 months later, it's the first time that I didn't punch a hole in my wall or kick a door down in my house. And I was like, wow, this is really working, And yeah, it was just a really eye-opening experience. And so I was all about it. Like, let's talk. The more I was able to talk and get things out and being able to connect with other veterans or even non-veterans, first responders and that sort of thing, we all had something in common, and we didn't have to really give our whole story out. We kind of knew, and then we knew that there was support out there, that you're not alone, right? And I think back of all my times where I was alone, and then I felt like this, and I felt so harbored, and with all my feelings and that mentality of adapt and overcome. You're John Wayne. You don't cry. You don't ask for help. Just get it done. Well, you know what? Like that served the purpose when I was in the service, right? But I'm not in the service no more. And so, now it's okay to be human again, ask for help, ask for support, and see what that looks like. And going through these different places and being able to talk and trying different styles of just learning, really changed it for me, Craig. And
Uh,
and and I can see it does for a lot of people around me as well.
yeah, that's interesting, Manu. That you told me before. You've not gone through a bunch of different therapeutic modalities and stuff like that. I didn't know you done the equine therapy. I've
Yeah.
actually met a couple guys up in Montana who were doing that, and one of them I spent, I don't know, a few hours with him or something like that. Excuse me, and he told me a number of stories, and one of them was about a Marine, who would come home from work every day. He would either sit in a certain room or in his garage, like separate from his child and his wife, for a little while until he felt like he could, you know, be in the same space as them, after work. And, he came and did that thing. And, he told everybody, when they're kind of doing an introduction at the beginning, he's like, I don't want to be here. I'm only here because my wife told me to come here. And he had some kind of major breakthrough there and didn't need the time, to himself anymore and all that. So yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that I've heard some pretty amazing stories about that. And what is it? I think the horse has like the biggest heart of all land mammals or something like that. There's something like that specifically that I think makes them, you know, able to, have that energy transfer with us, because everybody, for people who don't know, we've got like an electromagnetic field like around our heart in particular. And, that's when people say they get a bad vibe from people, whatever, it's typically, something going on there, that the frequencies are different between people. Um, So it's interesting how you say that you could see the horses if you try to put the mask on and say you're okay, they walk away, and then when you say I'm not okay, they come right on up to you. So
Yeah, on
pretty
my
awesome.
personal experience, it was, like, it was my turn to walk inside the ring. And, I've been there, at the program for a couple of days. I thought I had some breakthroughs, but I still was holding a lot of things in. None of these guys had seen me cry. And, like, okay, I got this, I don't really like horses. Like, I'm going to go walk up to this big beast and put my hand out and I'm going to pet him like everybody before me did. And like, I couldn't even get within 3 or 4 feet of this horse and would just walk away. And I try to, go behind it, and I would just keep walking away. And then, the trainer came over to me and said, let's talk for a minute, and after about 5 or 10 minutes of talking, I kind of broke through, and I really was vulnerable, and I started crying in front of her, and the whole class got to see it, and the horse felt it, and soon as she stepped away from me, and I wiped my tears, I turned around, and the horse is in my face, and it wants me to love it, and vice versa. And I was like, wow, like it really does work, but you have to believe and you have to be able to surrender to the process.
Mhm. Yeah, that's such a big one, being able to surrender, to these things. Like you say, I think a lot of us, I'm actually, reading for the second time right now, the book, The Power of Letting Go. And it talks about all of these things, all these judgments and stories and everything that we tell ourselves about ourselves and other people and all this. And yeah, when you just like, you know, just let stuff go. As crazy as it is, I think that we're sort of conditioned to like, oh, I have to be in control of these things. I have to make all this stuff conscious, and all that. Like we end up we kind of burn ourselves out.
Yeah.
I think when you
Yeah.
just kind of let go, it's just like, like the sort of weight comes off. Like you say, your nervous system comes from up here, and it just gradually, the volume comes down on everything. So,
And hearing you say letting go is before we started this, I gave you a story about me letting go. And in this program, halfway through, you go climb a 30-foot pole, electrical or a telephone pole, with just a harness on. And half of these guys are scared shitless of heights. Um, but the point of letting go is that I used to walk around with the identity of that I'm a Marine, right? And you're taught that too. Like, when you get out, you're still a Marine. It's not like, oh, I used to be a Marine. You are a Marine. Like, once a Marine, always a Marine. You're taught that, I used to walk around that saying that. That was my identity, even though I wasn't active anymore. Like, who are you? Oh, I'm a Marine. My name is Manu. Like, the first thing would come out is Marine, or Marine comes out of there in some way or another. And and that was my identity. But like I said before, that served a purpose while I was actively in the service, but I'm not, and I haven't been for so many years. And so the beautiful thing was I was able to climb on top of this pole and leave, and then you jump off of this pole and try to reach out for this ball that's hanging out in the middle of nowhere, and you yell out, whatever you need to yell out on top. And I yelled out, I'm Manu Boulengier, and I touched his ball and I fell back down, and they hoisted me back down. And the whole point of my story is that I left that Marine up there. All right, like, he served a purpose, but not anymore in my life currently. And so I came back down as a reborn Manu Boulanger. This is me, and that's being able to let go of that identity. Like, I learned a lot of things, and seen a lot of things that I'm so grateful for that my time in the service, but also a lot of things that just don't serve me a purpose anymore. And so I can leave those things behind and being able to make that separation and say, oh, I found myself again. And that was by being able to let go, talking about it, and having the support of others to go through this, not alone.
Hmm. It's like there's this thing that is kind of slowly getting broken down, but the sort of, this idea of to be masculine, you have to be able to just, adapt and overcome, like you say, or just, you know, hold it in, or, do whatever you got to do. And really, it's like, if you think in terms of, say, getting a job done, let's say you need to do some maintenance on something, or, build something, or whatever it is. Well, you need tools. If you don't have the right tools, you're probably not going to be able to get the job done, especially if you have no tools. Um, so really, it's like the different types of therapies and community, and all these different aspects is, instead of people seeing themselves as weak for asking for help on this stuff, which I think just in general asking for help is kind of, we're coming from a vulnerable state to some extent. Um, just to see each different thing as it's just another tool.
Right.
If nobody's embarrassed by having a $100,000 Snap-on, you know set of tools and nice toolbox and stuff like that, they're like, I've got all the tools I need to get all the jobs done. So I think if we can think of that, hey, look, all of these different types of therapies and whatnot, um, not everybody's going to like everything, but it's just they're just other tools that are out there to heal ourselves.
Yeah, and that's right, Greg. There's so many organizations that I went through, and I see a commonality nowadays of like we're trying to heal the mind, body, and soul. All right, and so there's different modalities out there to adjust these things. And I've done different therapies from like talk therapy to like EMDR and imaginary visioning therapy. I've done yeah, all kinds of different therapy, and some worked for me for the time being and some didn't, but I still learned something from each and every single one of those. And so just because something didn't work for me doesn't mean it won't work for you. And so you're not going to know until you're actually are vulnerable enough to say, hey, I need help and I'm willing to try whatever it is out there. And then do your due diligence and do your research and see, okay, what worked for this person and why. If you don't have a problem with alcoholism, like why would you go to, Alcohol Anonymous? All right. So there's different modalities for different people.
Yeah, pretty wild. I'm actually really curious actually to do that equine therapy thing. Not necessarily that I feel like I have anything specific, I need to go there for or whatever, but just to get that experience. Like you say, they're beasts. It's like power wise, we don't stand a chance against them. But you can see how gentle that they are, and yeah, just the stories that people have told. It's just kind of always just been floating around in there. It's like if I find somebody who seems to need something like that, that'd be something I'd send them to. But well, right on. And you said earlier, it was interesting too, kind of shifting back to earlier on. Having grown up in Amsterdam and leaving there as a teenager, how did you get the idea from there that being a U.S. Marine was the best thing that you could do in the military?
Well, it's as like I said, my little brother just got out of boot camp, so I mean he wasn't a great help on making me not go that direction. He is really pulling me in. But there was two other high school friends of mine that I grew up with that they all joined around. There was a total of five of us that all joined around the same time. And as a kid, when you're, at least for me, looking at the services, I was kind of like a bully in school, Mr. Popular, kind of needed attention. And so, when you look at the service, when I looked at the service, like, yeah, the Marines are like on the top of the list, right? Like they're the few, the proud, right? There's only a very few of them. And our boot camp is twice as long. We protect the president. We're the first ones in, last ones out. So why do you want to go second best, And But what they didn't tell you, or at least they didn't tell me, is that like the Marines, when it comes to a hierarchy and having nice stuff, we're on the bottom of the hierarchy. We're on the bottom of the ranks. Like when I went to Iraq, I was going in there with a weapon from Vietnam. I went in with a flak jacket with no sappy plates. I was driving a Humvee with no armor, right? So, and I show up at like an Air Force base, and they had cold Gatorades and soft serve ice cream, and they have 4-man bunkers, and I'm like, wow. So, that's kind of where it came from. I really just wanted to just be the best of the best. I just wanted to, I wanted adventure. I wanted something wild, and they say when you grow up with chaos, that's what you seek, when you grow up. And I grew up with a lot of childhood chaos, like especially this huge culture shock, moving from one end of the world to the other end of the world. And so yeah, like I had a lot of childhood chaos, and I think I kind of just pursued that. And the Marines was like, yeah, that was the perfect opportunity. The stories that I heard from people that were already in, I was like, oh man, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And that's what I got. Like it was definitely chaos for 4 years.
Yeah. It's just so funny because it's makes perfect sense. And one of my buddies who I've interviewed a couple times, he's saying that it's like we're all chasing something or running from something, and I think a lot of people kind of echo that sort of thing. Like, you have to grow up in a certain sort of a childhood to where looking at the Marine Corps makes sense. you know, uh, so it's like, I don't know. I just find it humorous now, looking back at it like that all of us, as young men were like, yeah, I'll sign up for that.
But there was a lot of uh for me, at least in my case, there were some promises made that were like, oh, okay. And I'll give you the example. Like I joined on a green card, I wasn't a citizen. I've done some construction, and I've seen that electricians, they make pretty good money, and they don't really do a whole lot of heavy work. I mean, they pulled wire and did this kind of stuff, and they were making $50 an hour. So I thought, let me get my experience in the Marine Corps, and then when I get out, I got a good profession. Well, I was told by my or by my recruiter that, yeah, you can become an electrician, but you need a security clearance, and you can't get one on a green card, right? So no problem, just go in as motor T. That's what I did. That's my recruiter. He was motor T. Go in as motor T, and then you can do what's called a lat move, right? You can laterally move into a different MOS. As soon as you get in, I'm like, oh, great. And he's like, as soon as you get in, you can get your citizenship, right? So you get your citizenship, you get your security clearance, you do a lat move, and you become an electrician. Easy peasy. Well, that's all truthful, but not the minute that you join. Like, I come to find out that after 4 years of serving, yes, I could get my citizenship pretty quick. Instead of a year, it took 3 months. And yes, you can do a lat move after your first contract is over and done with, and then only if they have room for you, right? So, you know, um, I spent 4 years thinking that I was going to be an electrician, and I drove trucks. So there's a couple of things that you don't know until you get in.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems like the one of the very common, threads about Marine Corps recruiters is like maybe they're not always lying necessarily, but they certainly know how to create a
And
certain picture in people's heads.
yeah. But it's all good. I learned from it. I did get to see the world like I anticipated, right? Just different parts of the world that I really didn't want to see. And I got a lot out of it. And then once I got out and I really started going through all these different organizations, and just really starting to seek help and seek different modalities and different tools to just get back on a better road again. Um, I started looking into the VA and the benefits, the benefits that we're all entitled to. And that's another thing that I wanted to touch on is that, at least for me and my guys, we were so ingrained and taught by the time we were getting out, there's nothing wrong with you. All right. You are, hey, I got all my limbs and I got my ears. There's nothing wrong with me. So don't go asking for help and don't go asking for compensation, because you know what? Somebody that got halfway blowing up needs it more than you do. Right. So for like 9 years, I was out and I didn't ask for help. I didn't ask for any kind of benefit. Like I just, I'm John Wayne and I got all my limbs. But the analogy I like to use nowadays is that if we go to Enterprise and we rent a car for 4 years and we bring it back without a scratch, but the whole inside is torn up, we're paying for that car.
Yeah,
So,
right.
the servers rented this, this vessel for 4 years, and yes, the outside is, almost pristine, but the inside got torn up, so like help me with that, right? And so, I started really looking into like how can I establish my benefits, how can I get help with that, and how do I get, what's entitled to me, right? And what's out there. And I started working for the VA. I started working for the Veterans Administration while I was going to school under Chapter 35. And I started really learning, okay, what do we have? What are we entitled to? And how do you get it? And sometimes it's pretty challenging to get into your benefits and to, get the things that you're entitled to. And sometimes when we hear no one time, then we just give up and, that's it. For me, no is always a challenge. It just means try better in a different way, try harder in a different direction. You'll get to yes. A no just means there'll be a yes, somewhere else down the road. And so I started really helping veterans like, hey, you know what? Like, have you gotten this? Have you tried to go to school? Have you tried to get help with this or with your benefits? And, finally I was able to get myself up to 100%, and I give back to other veterans, to get there and think that, you might be okay on the outside, but you might have some damage on the inside. So get some help for that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a big one, and a hilarious analogy too of the rental car that's all torn up on the inside. And yeah, it's such a shame that without beating a dead horse, that a lot of people do, just complaining about the VA. It's such a shame that people aren't told when they're getting out, hey, look, this is who you'll talk to at the VA to learn about the different benefits that are available and stuff like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be disability or whatever. Um, But who would you say, Manu, from that position, if somebody's just getting out, um, is there a specific title or department there or something like that that they would go to just explore all the benefits available to them?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, nowadays, I mean, it's been 20 plus years since I've been out, but I've helped and I'm helping people that are transitioning or barely just got out, and the system nowadays is a little bit better than what we had back in the day. So yeah, you do get some exposure to the VA, and they do tell you, it's best if you start, the process, before your last day, so get introduced, know where everything is. But really, like the minute that you get out, like my advice is you go straight to your nearest VA, right? And then you go and enroll into your nearest VA, and they do what's called a means test to kind of see where you're at and where you need help, and then and get yourself enrolled into the VA. Everything that you've done in your military service is, for the most part, documented into your medical file, and so I'll give you a small example. The first thing that we should do is when you go into the service, they do a decimal hearing on your hearing. All right. They say your hearing is at a certain decimal level. 4 years later of, throwing grenades and shooting whatever and driving trucks, your hearing has been affected. So there is a disability rating and there's compensation for that. But all you need to do is just go do a hearing test. And the way to get that done is by go enroll into your nearest VA and go to pensions and compensation and say that you want to start, filing for your compensation. And so not only are you going to get compensated for your hearing loss, but it can also help you maybe, do something about your hearing, get you a hearing aid or, get whatever devices that you need to help you with disabilities that you might not even know you have.
Okay, yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, definitely. I echo that. Getting started early on is a big one. But well, right on. I know that we've got at least probably another couple episodes or whatever to get into what you're doing for work and some other healing modalities. You want to give everybody a little bit of a taste of what might be to come in those next episodes?
Yeah, of course, man. I just wanted to say two things just to piggyback back on the VA. And when you go in and go get your disabilities, and this is a big, big one right here, even if there's nothing wrong with you, just go get your hearing checked, right? Because if you get rated 0% or more here in California, you Californian veterans, your kids' college tuition is paid for, all right? So if you don't want anything else, at least you can get your kids' college tuition paid for. And my second son, I mean, he's going to welding school, and he's getting paid. His school is paid for, and he's getting about $1,400 a month to be a full-time student, right? So if you don't want to do it for yourself, at least do it for your loved one. And of course, in terms of going to help you out as well. You don't have to save up for that college. And so, yeah, just to leave you a little bit about what I do and what else I've learned is that through these different programs, I've learned that there's a lot of different cultures in the world that have faced similar issues that we face over here on this western side of the hemisphere, and being able to see that we all have similar problems, but there's different modalities to get to the same goal. And so some of these modalities are just ancient old modalities, and some of them are holistic modalities. And so I've been exposed to those and been learning from those, and just kind of gathering all this great ancient and ancestral knowledge from all around the world, and being able to kind of just put that together and shed a light on that to certain people, and help them along their way.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, it's pretty exciting to hear more on that. And have you've probably seen In Waves and War, right?
I have.
Yeah, I imagine that Kara, who we met through, of course, she told me multiple times, "Hey, you got to watch this," and finally I did. Like, I don't really watch movies or TV or anything like that, and finally I was like, okay, let me sit myself down and watch this, and I was like, oh, okay, and like now I get it.
It's just another one of those lights that just gives us a little exposure into what else is out there.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right, Manu. Well, I appreciate you joining me today. And any closing thoughts you want to put out there?
I just want to say, like I always say on my closing thoughts, have love for yourself, have love for one another, and go out there and enjoy nature as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. All right, man. Well, thanks again. I'll stay on here just after I hit stop on this, but appreciate it, Manu, and we'll talk to you again here soon. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.